Hey everyone, Tactics here with a quick follow-up video on 9.1, as we did actually see a build go up on the PTR yesterday evening, which had some pretty interesting changes for a number of specs. It introduced the Mythic Plus rating system that Blizzard's been working on, and it gave us a little hint at what the new Domination seasonal affix might be. Before getting into that though, remember, if you enjoyed this video, please make sure to like and subscribe to be notified when I post more Warcraft content, and let's get into it, starting with a just flat 6% buff to Blood Death Knights. Now this is something they definitely needed. They needed this for sure. Unfortunately though, while 6% does seem like a lot for a DPS spec to gain, right? If you just flat buffed a DPS spec by 6%, that's a pretty solid buff. For tanks, it's less of a game changer just because, again, their damage numbers are generally lower. And so it's not actually going to change too much for them. We can open up Warcraft logs here. This is Hungering Destroyer. If we just change this to tanks, we can see that blood DKs are down at the bottom here by a decent margin, right? So if you give them a 6% boost, they're really not going to gain too much ground here. And it's not really enough damage for them. Yeah, so they need a little bit more help than that. They do bring AMZ, obviously, but as we mentioned in the previous video, that's hinted at being nerfed. So we'll have to see where Blood DK stand. But right now, they're pretty tanky, but they don't bring much about anything else. So unfortunate for them. We did see Survival get a pretty decent buff there. 15% to Raptor Strike, Kill Command, Mongoose Bite, and Flanking Strike. So in general, that's actually not terrible. Again, looking at single target stuff for Hungering Destroyer, if we go to DPS specs here, Survival, not in a good spot, right? On top of that, their melee spec with 2 ranged alternatives, and in general, if you want this spec to be good enough to be brought to the top end raids, they just need to do insane damage, right? They don't bring enough utility. They're a melee spec with already limited melee spots. So, I mean, this is nice for sure. It's not enough to make them good enough for top end rating, which is unfortunate. Some pet stuff here. This probably has some PvP implications. I don't know what Trample actually does, but for PvE stuff, there's not too much of a change. Priest, Clear Mind effectiveness. I believe this was the Mass Dispel Conduit, so a little nerf to that. And then we saw some changes to Shadow Priest. So, Shadow Word Pain and Vampiric Touch both had a 25% damage increase, so that's their dots. Devouring Plague saw an 18% damage reduction, and then they saw a 16% damage reduction to Shadow Flame Prism and 8% to Talbadars, which are 2 legendaries they've been using. Now, this is a net nerf, right, in single target. So I believe Shadow Priest are talking about somewhere between a 4 and 5% nerf in single target. So again, if you look at here, Shadow Priest up by a fair margin, 4 to 5% nerf here, they're still on top, right? So it's a pretty decent nerf to them in single target. They definitely needed it, and again, you saw that single target on Hungering Destroyer there. This here could be interesting. The current iteration of Shadow Priest in Shadowlands, they're not great multi-daughters, right? That's something previous Shadow Priest was pretty good at in like Legion and BFA. But in Shadowlands, they're pretty much exclusively a single target class. So it'll be interesting to see if this now bumps them up in like 2, 3, 4 target scenarios and where that lets them stand in those situations. Because right now they just have really, really good single target, and that's about all they have. So interesting to see there. They definitely needed the nerf in single target, but we'll see if this helps them in other situations. Going back to Warlock now. Dark Pack's talent, additional absorb shield, been increased again. So this was already increased to 216% because I think no one was taking it. Has increased again. This could get out of control quickly. They keep giving it insane buffs. Absorb shields can be a little crazy, but we'll have to see how that plays out. But then we saw some pretty nice Affliction changes. So Affliction locks are going to be very, very happy right now. They buffed Corruption. They buffed Seed of Corruption. Dark Caller, which was their cooldown reduction, is no longer a talent. It's now baseline, right? Previously that was on the Haunt row, so you kind of had to choose. Now it's no longer on the Haunt row. You just get this baseline, so it lines up your cooldowns now to be 2 minutes, which is already a fantastic change for Affliction. It makes them feel a lot better. You're lining up your stuff. You no longer have that offset of a 2 minute and a 3 minute. So that's really nice. Shadow's Embrace was then removed. which a lot of Affliction Warlocks were happy about. They didn't like using that. It's now a talent, right? It takes the spot of Dark Caller on that talent row now, instead of being baseline and Dark Caller being the talent. So again, it's going to now compete with Haunt, so most Warlocks will probably not take it. They then have a new conduit, so that Shadow's Embrace conduit was essentially completely reworked. It's now Shadow Bolt or Drain Soul if you take it. Deals 33% more damage per damage over time effect active on your target. That's pretty good. That's pretty good for pure single target damage, especially Drain Soul, especially in execute phase with Drain Soul, right? So Affliction Warlock single target is very, very good now, actually. And Warlocks like Kalamazi, like THD, they've been posting their damage breakdowns. They'll probably put a picture of that up, but very, very Legion-esque. They're claiming it to be. So we'll have to see if the damage numbers stay. I know this conduit is probably a little bit insane right now. I might see a touch of a nerf, but overall, I mean, Affliction Warlocks are definitely back on the menu for 9.1. And hey, man, Warlocks, they're always going to be good. They're a very safe class to pick. If you're on the fence, Warlocks, always safe to pick. And they're looking great. All three specs, honestly, are looking pretty decent for 9.1, so they're in a good spot now. Last up here, we do have some buffs to arms and protection warriors in terms of damage. This is in non-PvP situations, because I know arms is pretty solid right now in PvP, but it's Mortal Strike, Deep Wounds, Overpower, and Regular Execute, not Condemn Execute, all by 10%. This Execute change is probably going to affect almost no one, because all the top-end arms warriors are Venthyr, because Condemn is just so good on arms. And then Prot also saw the 10% execute damage increase. They're kind of a tank spec whose damage is kind of meh, right? They're on the bottom end. As you saw, they were 4th behind Brewmaster. On fights where they're able to execute, it does bump up a little bit. They get a little, they become pretty much on par with Brewmasters, I'd say, if they can execute. So this is a nice little boost there. But again, this doesn't help them on fights where they can't execute at all. We did actually, I think, raid testing was in these notes, but I believe it was actually canceled. So there's no raid testing this week, it looks like. The only other thing is some minor stuff. So there's now a crafting thing, so you can make one piece of 230 eye level crafted equipment, which is nice. I know at the beginning of the expansion, what crafting gear was not good. It was like, well, 158 eye level or something like that. It was not good. Maybe 170 after you got the mark. So that's nice. You'll be able to get a normal eye level, or a little bit higher than normal eye level piece of loot from your crafted set, which is nice. Nice little boost. The Mythic Plus rating system, which I talked about. So this is now in the group finder on PTR. So you can see the group leaders total score. You can see applicants total score. And then on your own page, you can see here it breaks down Fortified and Tyrannical separately. And it has just obviously your total breakdown. Scores are a little bit higher than Raider.io overall. Like here, you're getting 324 rating for a 16, so it's going to be slightly more inflated. But overall, I mean, we'll have to see how the system plays out. Hopefully, it has all the same kind of things Raider.io does, right? I know, like when you're signing up for a dungeon, Raider.io shows best dungeon, best for that specific dungeon, right? This currently doesn't show that yet, but we'll have to see if they end up implementing that later on. Overall, just a fairly early version of the system now in. Then we have the Domination Affix, and basically, Wowhead has data mined exactly one line, and that is defeat the jailer's forces to gain cool powers. Now, this line alone has made a lot of people very scared of anima powers being in the dungeon. It could be good, could be bad. I'm going to reserve judgment. When I read this, though, I mean, I think of like a Beguiling-esque system where there's like mobs placed around. Maybe Awakened, where the mobs have set positions instead of the Beguiling, where they kind of randomized each week. And you like kill them, or you can choose to kill them to get powers, which would be interesting, maybe. But randomness, I think, needs to be eliminated. Maybe if they did something like having specific mobs set to drop certain types of powers, so you could choose. And if they had stationary positions, that would be very, very good to eliminate that randomness. But we'll just have to wait and see. Right, this could be nothing, right? This could be just a remnant of an older build, and this could have nothing to do with the new seasonal affix. Not sure yet. It's too early to tell, but lots of people getting scared about what this could mean and about all the anima powers you could get. to troll yourself and your teammates in dungeons. But we'll have to wait and see. That is it, though, for this week's PTR, guys. Remember, if you enjoyed the content, make sure to like and subscribe to support the channel. It really does help. It looks like we aren't going to get warrant rate testing this week, as I mentioned, but when we do, you can check me out on Twitch at Tactics, where I'll be streaming it live. That's all for now, though. As always, thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.